The sun had just risen over the small town in Cebu, casting a warm glow across the courtyard of the chapel where Father Elias served. At only 22, he was one of the youngest priests in the region, yet he carried himself with a gentleness and humility that made people forget his age. After the morning mass, he stepped outside, greeting each parishioner with a soft smile and a comforting hand on their shoulder. Music had always been his quiet refuge. As a child, he sang in the small church choir, his voice a soft beam of light in moments of darkness. But he never imagined it could be anything more than a private blessing, something shared only with the walls of the chapel or the people he comforted during difficult times. That afternoon, as he sat under a mango tree reading messages on his old, cracked phone, he saw an announcement that Got Talent Global was opening auditions online. His heart skipped. A strange mix of excitement and fear stirred inside him. Could a young priest like him step into a world of bright lights and cameras? Would people think he didn't belong? He tried to brush off the idea, but that evening, as he visited families in the barangay, it seemed everyone had the same thought. "Father, your voice has healed us many times," said an elderly woman as she held his hand. "Why not let it heal the world too?" Children tugged at his clothes, saying, "Father Elias, we want to see you on TV." Standing in the fading golden light, he felt their hope wrap around him like a warm embrace. Maybe this wasn't about him at all. Maybe this was about sharing a gift meant to reach farther than he ever dreamed. And with a trembling breath, he whispered, "Yes, I'll try. If you'd like, I can expand scene 2 next, or continue with scenes 3 to 5. The day of the audition arrived faster than Father Elias expected. With a borrowed suitcase holding nothing more than his cassock, a Bible, and a small wooden rosary, he boarded the flight to the city where the Got Talent Global taping was being held. It was his first time traveling alone, and every sound, the announcement bell, the chatter of passengers, the roar of the engines, seemed louder than usual. When he stepped into the grand studio, he felt as though he had entered another universe. Gigantic screens flashed with colors, lights moved like comets across the ceiling, and people rushed past carrying headsets, clipboards, and cables. It was chaos, but a thrilling kind of chaos he had never known. A young producer approached him. "Father Elias." He nodded. "You're on in 10 minutes. Are you feeling okay?" He tried to smile, but his fingers trembled around his rosary. "I'm overwhelmed," he admitted. "It's normal," the producer said kindly. "Just breathe, and sing from your heart." As he waited behind the curtains, the muffled roar of the audience made his chest tighten. What if they judged him for being a priest on a global stage? What if he failed? Then a stagehand guided him forward. The curtain lifted. The light hit him like a wave. The audience, thousands of faces glowing beneath the stage lights, fell into a hush when they saw his cassock. Simon Cowell leaned forward, eyebrow raised. "You're a priest?" "Yes, sir," he answered softly. "And why are you here?" Father Elias swallowed hard. "To share a message of hope, through music." The judges exchanged curious glances. The audience leaned in. In that moment, the entire world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for a young priest from a small town in Cebu to either rise or fall. And then, the music began. The first soft notes of "You Raise Me Up" floated through the speakers, and Father Elias closed his eyes, not out of fear, but out of surrender. He placed one hand lightly on his chest, feeling his heartbeat, steady and sincere. When he opened his eyes again, something inside him had shifted. He took a breath. Then he sang. His voice emerged warm and gentle, almost like a whispered prayer carried on a breeze. The purity of his tone surprised everyone. It wasn't loud or dramatic, it was honest. It was the kind of voice that didn't try to impress, only to touch. The crowd instantly fell silent. You could almost hear the sound of people exhaling slowly, letting the music wash over them. A woman in the third row pressed her hands to her lips as tears gathered in her eyes. A man who had come just to accompany his son to the show found himself trembling, though he didn't understand why. As Father Elias reached the chorus, his voice grew stronger, not with ego, but with purpose. Every note vibrated with emotion he had carried for years. The children he comforted, the families he prayed for, the lonely hearts he tried to heal. All of them seemed to flow through him now, turning his performance into something far greater than a song. Sofia Vergara leaned toward the table, whispering, "This feels holy." Heidi wiped her eyes without shame. Even Simon, who rarely softened, sat frozen. His chest rose slowly, as if each breath carried something heavy he'd kept buried. When Father Elias reached the final high note, his voice cracked, but beautifully, vulnerably, like a heart breaking open in the most human way. The moment it ended, silence filled the room again. Not empty silence, sacred silence. The kind that comes right before miracles. For a moment after the last note faded, the entire auditorium stayed frozen in that sacred stillness, no rustling, no whispers, no movement. It was as if everyone needed one extra heartbeat to return from wherever his voice had taken them. Then the first clap echoed. Another. Then the entire theater erupted with such force that Father Elias instinctively stepped back, overwhelmed. People rose to their feet in a wave of emotion, crying, shouting, cheering with a kind of gratitude rarely seen on the show. Some hugged strangers. Some pressed their palms together as if in prayer. The judges were just as shaken. Sofia pressed a hand to her chest. Father, that was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. Her voice trembled, a mix of awe and disbelief. Heidi couldn't speak at first. Tears streamed freely down her cheeks. When she finally managed words, they came out in a whisper. Thank you, for this moment. Simon, usually the last to show emotion, leaned forward with both elbows on the table. His eyes glistened, not from the lights, but from something deeper. He cleared his throat, but the emotion wouldn't leave. He began, then stopped. The audience held its breath. He tried again. I feel like I've just witnessed a blessing. Father Elias bowed his head, humbled. Thank you, sir, he said softly. I only wanted to share hope. Just then, a young girl in the audience, no older than 10, stood up, tears running down her cheeks. With shaky hands, she called out, Father, your song reminded me of my Papa in heaven. Thank you, you made me feel like he was here again. Without hesitation, Father Elias stepped down from the stage and approached her. He knelt so he could look into her eyes, offering her a gentle, heartfelt embrace. You are never alone, he whispered. Your Papa hears you, even now. Cameras captured it all, one of the show's most emotional moments ever. And the applause, roaring like a miracle, continued long after. Night after his performance, Father Elias sat alone in his small hotel room. The world outside was buzzing, reporters, fans, producers, but inside his room, there was only the soft hum of the air conditioner and the glow of a single lamp. He held his wooden rosary gently, feeling the familiar grooves beneath his fingers. He didn't feel like a star. He felt like the same young priest from Cebu who prayed for people in quiet mornings and sang hymns at bedside vigils. But the world had changed around him. His phone beeped non-stop. When he finally gathered the courage to check it, he froze. The video of his performance had already reached 30 million views. Messages poured in from every corner of the globe: Germany, Brazil, Egypt, Argentina, South Korea, Nigeria. Your song saved my life tonight. I haven't believed in anything for years, but your voice made me feel something again. My father passed away last month. Thank you for bringing me peace. He read every message slowly, his chest tightening with gratitude. Back in his home parish, people gathered around tiny screens, crying and cheering as they watched him shine. Children he once taught to pray screamed with pride. The elderly he comforted smiled through tears. His community felt as if the whole world was finally seeing what they had known all along, that his voice carried healing. Yet fame didn't change him. When he returned home after the show, he stepped out of the van and immediately walked toward the chapel. Before talking, before celebrating, he knelt quietly at the altar. Lord, he whispered, if my voice has brought light to even one heart, then let it always be yours, not mine. The world saw a rising star. But to the people he touched, and to the millions who listened, he became something far more enduring. A reminder that kindness, faith, and a simple song can heal even the heaviest of souls.